All right, welcome back to another episode of the Big J Little J Show. Today's episode, we're going to start off with the coaching carousel. That is, a lot of coaches were fired this week. We're going to talk about it, how it impacts or may not impact Manny Diaz and Duke, and then obviously the Georgia Tech preview we'll get into after that. But first, Connor, we have an ad. We have a sponsor for this video, and our sponsor for today is a real estate agent by the name of Jacob Mann. Connor, I don't know if you've heard of that guy before. Connor sometimes would get mine and his name mixed up in the paper back in the day, but Jacob Mann, my brother, is the sponsor for today's video and episode. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in North Carolina, whether you're moving across town or across the state, Jacob Mann with eXp Realty is here to help you make your real estate journey smooth, strategic, and stress-free. From first-time buyers to seasoned investors, he knows North Carolina and how to get results. You can connect with Jacob, my brother, today. His phone number is 336-266-9088, or his Instagram is at the.real.estate.man with two N's. And let's make your move the best one yet. And I will say with Jacob and our sponsor, obviously, he will go from Charlotte, where he lives, to all the way to Mebane and anywhere in the surrounding area. So Jacob he's not just stationed in Charlotte. He will drive. He has driven he just got off his honeymoon and landed in Charlotte, drove to Mebane the next day when he got off his honeymoon to close the deal. So if you're in Mebane, if you're in Charlotte, give my brother a call, 336-266-9088. Connor, let's get right into it. You're at Manny's presser today. What did he say in regards to James Franklin being let go?
So he said a lot. He said some things specific to Penn State and some things specific to Duke and the fact that they play Georgia Tech this week, and that's where he wants the team's focus, obviously. Manny got a little philosophical. I feel like we crossed that bridge a couple times last year. Literally talking about one of his quotes was about a bridge, or about a river. There was a no man crosses the same river twice. So because he is not the same man, that kind of thing. I think that came up when he was going down to Miami, talking about how he had grown as a coach. And part of him talking about that last year and his growth as a coach is because of the 2 years that he spent as DC at Penn State, between getting fired at Miami and being hired at Duke. So the connection's natural. I think Manny, I don't think Manny was caught off guard when he was asked about it today. I think if you're in college football, you have to have your head in the sand if you don't know about what is going on at Penn State, not just in the last couple of weeks, but really the storyline that's been building for 6 or 7 years, as long as it's felt like they're knocking on the door of winning a national championship, or at least being in the perennial conversation, and haven't quite gotten the big time wins to do it. So look, I can't sit here and tell you that Manny came out and said, quote, "I love Duke. I'm at Duke forever. Go Blue Devils." And that's the end of the conversation, because he didn't say that. If you go to Devils Illustrated, I've just hit publish on about 1,000-word story that has a lot of his quotes from today. I tried to add context where they're needed. I think the most important thing that he said today was pointing out that for a long time in college football, people have thought you had to be at a legacy program, one of the haves in the have-not discussions. You had to be at one of those places to compete on a championship level. And he specifically brought up Indiana winning at Oregon this weekend as an example of that's no longer the case. Like, you don't have to be at one of those types of places. If you have the alignment from president down to faculty and everywhere in between at a Power 4 conference or Power 4 program, you can compete for championships. So we're not we're not beating around the bush when we say Duke is obviously a have-not in the college football landscape. And I think it's a good thing that it's the Duke coach who is going to be pursued by other schools that have more resources than Duke, that he thinks that you can compete for championships at a school that doesn't necessarily meet everybody's criteria of that place plays big boy football and is a perennial contender year after year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I already had that ready to say when you were talking about it. I saw David Hell tweeted like something Manny said to the extent of Indiana, just like, yeah, you can go these programs now. You don't have to go to like a Penn State to potentially win a national championship. I mean, Kurt Cignetti came right into Indiana and has made them a championship contender. And I mean, 3 years ago, you could argue the bottom two P4 jobs were Duke and Indiana. It was just like, hey, good luck, because Kurt Cignetti was tied to Duke in the candidate list, and he was tied to Indiana in the candidate list. And you see what he's done with Indiana, and now obviously it has shifted. Those two are not the bottom of the barrel Power 4 jobs, but I mean, you can make that argument 24 months ago. And while you were talking, Connor, a person or tweet that I just saw that could be tied to Penn State via Heather Dinich at ESPN is don't count out Mike Elko, she said, because Mike Elko is played at Penn and he's from Jersey. And I just read that and I was like, could you just imagine that? I was not prepared to talk about Mike Elko with Penn State, but could you just imagine him going from Duke to A&M and A&M fans rubbing it in our faces to then they are the ones that are left in the dust? I don't think it's going to happen because they are like sixth in the country, but that would be crazy.
Yeah, I
literally just looked down while you were talking and just saw the tweet, and that's
no, she's not the first one that I've seen mention his name. Chris Vanini with The Athletic did an article last night and named, God, I want to say it was 13 or 14 guys on his list, and the last one was Mike. And I was having a conversation with my dad on the way to Duke today, and it was like, if you're going to make one of these lists and you name 14 people, it kind of defeats the purpose. Like pick a number as low as 5 and as high as, I would say, 10, because I guess 10 is the most that I've ever done with one of these coaching lists. Once you get past 10, though, man, you're naming anybody and everybody that might say yes to the deal. And that, I don't know. But why would he leave Texas A&M?
I know.
I have said on our show before, Mike wants to win a national championship. He can win a national championship at Texas A&M.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was, like I said, that was not in my cards to talk about for the Penn State job, because I do want to talk. I want to get a deep dive into the Penn State stuff, like my take, because I know obviously Twitter has been going crazy. There's obviously Duke fans that have PTSD of Coach Elko leaving to go from Durham to Texas A&M, where he came from. Manny Diaz obviously came from Penn State to Duke, and I'm surprised Penn State's not giving their other defense coordinator a call, Brent Pry. Just call him up. I know he's looking for a job, and you could just do that. But it's going to be – it comes with the territory for Duke, and I'm going to get into it with, Manny Diaz winning at Duke, Elko won at Duke, and your name's going to be attached to bigger programs, and I put it in quotations, but they are bigger programs when it comes to college football. But I'll just start from the top with James Franklin. James Franklin was 104-45 at Penn State. He went 34-8 from 2022 to 2024, and last year he was one play away from playing in the college ball final if Aller didn't throw that interception. And in that 3-year span, while he was went 34-8, there were still Penn State fans. There were some of them that wanted him gone because he couldn't win like the big game against the Ohio States or the Oregons. And though he made the semifinals last year, he's gone. And so I see how a job like that's attractive, with the chance to coach a national championship caliber team with unlimited resources that obviously Duke does not have. But between Manny Diaz and Mike Elko, the thing that Manny knows is what it's like to be on that hot seat. Elko leaving Duke he just ascended from a very good defense coordinator to a very good immediate head coach in college football to going to Texas A&M. So he's still riding that high of like, I'm untouchable. Kind of like Kirk Cignetti is, where he is just, he's won at every program. I know he's not your favorite
too much.
I get it, but he's just climbed that ladder, that career ladder. And Manny already has felt, he talked about it. It's like a 3-week thing where I forgot what he said today.
Coaches go through 3 phases. There's honeymoon phase. There's please don't leave. And please get out or something, something to that effect.
And so with that, like, that's where I think Manny, why would you leave a cushy job at Duke to where you have the resources, like you're getting the resources year by year. It's improved under football to where when Elko left, for example, like he pleaded for Duke to give him more money so he could pay his players. And Duke just said no, like they could not give more money to football. And that is like one of the main reasons Elko did take that A&M job, is because Riley Leonard's making less than $50,000 and he knew he was leaving. And then other people are being poached, and Duke was not paying their players to what they needed to be paid to be an ACC, top of the ACC caliber team. So I don't blame Elko in that regard. Obviously, the way he left stung, but when you know your QB1's getting poached and you can only offer like $35,000 to a guy, it took Elko leaving and Riley Leonard leaving for Duke to be like, okay, we're going to put more money into football. They put $1 million into Malik Murphy, and then now, obviously, it's well documented. Darian Mensah is getting close to $8 million for 2 years. Like, Duke is putting that money up front to where they are buying into football, and so I think that should be enough for right now for Manny Diaz to turn down like a Penn State. And I know he was DC at Penn State, but now if Florida State opens up, that is one that I'm a little bit worried about, because obviously that's his alma mater. And there's just no way I think that that Mike Norvell stays at Florida State. I mean, I think the writing's on the wall, and I can see Manny Diaz being on the short list for that job. But then for Florida State fans, it's like, do we want to hire the guy that got fired by our rival? Like, is that a good look? Because that's a valid argument, but, he's a Florida State alum. And so that would be like the one school where I'm like, damn. I do want to say, Connor, a guy that is – I haven't told you this. I wanted to save this for the show and get your thoughts. The one guy that I really like that nobody's talking about that should be a candidate for this Penn State job is Kalen DeBoer. For Alabama fans hate him. He won 9 games last year. You would have thought they were 3-9. And then they lost the first game this season, and they wanted him. They were making GoFundMe's to get to his buyout, to get him fired. He's 5-1 now at Alabama. He's 118-17 in his career, and he won at Washington, won the Big Ten, made it to the finals with Washington. If I'm his agent, I'm making calls like, hey, get my guy out of Alabama. They hate him. He wants to come back to the Big Ten, and that'd be a great hire. I think Kalen DeBoer should be a guy that'd be on the list of like, hey, you know what? Me and Alabama, we're just not the right fit. We need to go our separate ways. Van Base and me have a miscommunication of our relationship. It's too overwhelming. I can't follow Nick Saban. I can definitely follow James Franklin. I'm going to Penn State.
But he is following Saban because he's 5-1 and turned it around after the season opening loss to Florida State.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like with that Alabama fan base, they're just waiting for that second loss just to be like, I told you so. He's not the man for the job. Like, if he goes 10-2 this year, they'll still point to how do we lose to a bad Florida State team, and whenever that second loss inevitably is going to happen, it's like, how do we lose to this team? Whereas he goes 10-2 at Penn State and wins against Oregon or Ohio State, then they're like, okay, we got our coach.
But 10-2 this year might get into the playoff.
I know.
We didn't last year.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying that fan base is going to look for ways to get not like him. That's my point. The guy is undefeated. He's 2-0 against Kirby Smart, and he's 2-0 against Sark in Texas when he was at Washington. Like, he beats the better programs with the good coaches. It's just he lost to Vanderbilt year one, and that was just not a great look for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I just throwing that out there. Like, it's not obviously on anybody's list, but I'm just saying, if I'm his agent, I'm sure they've had conversations of like, hey, would you be interested? I'm sure there's conversations.
It seems like Penn State's first call is Matt Rule because Matt Rule was at Temple when Penn State's AD was at Temple. They vacationed together. They're buddies. It seems like 1B would be Signetti. I would be thrilled if Kurt, for the second time in his career, went from one job in the conference to another job in the same conference. That would just be delightful for me. Then it seems like, okay, if you don't get either one of them, you move to the long shot list where I think Kalen DeBoer would be. I think Lane Kiffin would be there, although it seems like I can't imagine Lane Kiffin coaching anywhere other than the SEC at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe Brian Kelly, if he's finished with LSU media, it seems like he has the biggest problem with down there.
Shocker, him establishing relationships is a problem. I'm shocked by that.
The golf season isn't as long in Happy Valley as it is in Louisiana. If you can't get somebody from the long shot group, then you move to a group that includes Manny. It includes, I think it should include Clark Lee, because if you're winning at Vanderbilt, what can you do? You know, it's kind of the same logic that people apply to Duke. If you're winning at that place, then what could you do at our place? I don't know that Penn State is going to be in a hurry to hire the Vanderbilt coach after they just went through hiring the Vanderbilt coach and having him for 12 years.
Correct. That's what I was going to say.
I don't think that should disqualify him, but I also think, like, okay, if you don't want to think about Clark Lee, I get it.
But you know what? One thing about Manny Diaz is he was a college football head coach in the state of Pennsylvania. Like, that people forget. He was the head coach at Temple for 17 days.
That's right.
So he has experience of being the head coach in Pennsylvania. Now he's going to go from Temple to Penn State. Him and Matt Rule. Maybe it's 1A, 1B all of a sudden.
No, here's the thing about it too. It's a small candidate pool because it's a top 10 college football job that you don't just hand over to, Bob Chesney is not a candidate, I wouldn't think.
No.
You're not hiring
even John Summerall, who's a fantastic coach. He's not going to be on that short list. He'd be on the short list for, he'd be on my personal short list. I already told you, he'd be my 1-1 if Manny did leave to go somewhere else. I'm calling John Summerall because he was one of the top candidates for Duke when Elko left, when he was at Troy, and then obviously took Tulane. But Manny's just, his name's going to be tied to the openings. If Penn State, I do think it's Matt Rule. I mean, Matt Rule even said, I quoted it right before we started recording because I thought it was hilarious on the Penn State job. I love Penn State. It's my alma mater. I love Pat Kraft. Troy and I are in constant communication. And he said, I wanted to rebuild Nebraska football. Not I want to rebuild Nebraska football. I wanted. When you say you wanted and you're still there, you're gone. And so I think Matt Rule is already out the door at Nebraska to take the Penn State job. But the Florida State job, and hell, even the Florida job, Manny's whole family is from the state of Florida, obviously Miami. And I don't think Florida would be calling him, but
Florida would be like the last infinity stone, right?
Yeah.
He coached at Miami, graduated from Florida State, then he becomes the coach at Florida.
Yeah. And he says don't cross the same bridge twice, but damn, he'd be going to some parallel ones. He'd be close. He would be close to the same bridge.
But I think you touched on it. I think we've talked about it before. The difference here is Manny has been in a job in which you're expected to win 10 games a year and compete for national championships. He knows the pressure cooker that came with being Miami's coach for 3 years. Every time I've talked to him or talked to people who know him, it seems like he is happy with Duke. He wants to be at Duke.
His son's at Duke.
His son's at Duke. It's more of a fit. He fits Duke a lot better than I thought when Duke hired him. Like I'll admit that right now. Like I did not think the type of person Manny was would be a good fit for Duke. And I've gotten to know him over 2 years, and like he does fit what Duke wants. So it's going to be interesting. Like I know why we have to talk about it. I know that we want to talk about it. I know that I hate this is what the industry is, but it draws clicks and it draws views. And I have my own feelings on how shitty and backward that is. But I also want to just kind of talk about Georgia Tech too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to get to Georgia Tech, but it had to be addressed. I mean, because a lot of Duke fans, including myself, are still licking the wounds when Elko left because
he can't hurt you anymore.
I know, but I said, like, I had the thought that he wasn't going to leave Duke because, obviously the Mark Stoops thing, if that doesn't fall through, he's still at Duke. And so obviously, and he wasn't the first choice. He wasn't the second choice. He was the emergency third, and that's kind of the same category Manny's in. With our top of the list said no, so I need to get the guy that knows the program the best, a former DC, to come back, and that was what Mike Elko did at A&M and what Manny could possibly do at Penn State. But out of 10, before we get to the Georgia Tech preview, I would give it like a 2 out of 10 that I'm worried he's going to leave to go to Penn State because I think Matt Rule is, like I said, he wanted to rebuild Nebraska. He's already at Penn State right now.
Does Nebraska play Penn State this year?
I do not know. That's a good question. That'd be great. Maybe if they do, and hopefully it's at Penn State, that Matt Rule just goes to the other locker room and gives them a post-game speech. He just tells Nebraska, they shakes hands with them. All right, guys, I'm going over here. It's like a baseball trade in the MLB when the two teams make a trade or playing each other. The guy just goes to the other dugout.
Yeah, Nebraska's at Penn State, November 22nd.
God, he's gonna be in a box. He's gonna be like in a box watching the game. That's what's gonna happen. That is a great pull. He's gonna be watching, and he's gonna get interviewed by ESPN or whoever's gonna be on the call. I think it's a disaster hire if that happens. If it was 6 years ago, I think Matt Rule makes a lot of sense, but I just don't see it. I think they can go better. We'll keep it in the loop. Like next week, I'm sure Mike Norvell's going to be fired. We're going to be talking about this again. So who knows? But let's get into the preview, Connor. Duke versus Georgia Tech. Duke's coming off a bye. Duke is a 3-point favorite. The over/under is 60.5. And it's crazy. Duke is a 3-point favorite against the number 12 team in the country. I think they were a 3-point underdog against Illinois when they came to town week 2. Obviously, Illinois covered and cruised, but it's not rare for this to happen. It happened this past week. I won money. I bet USC as the home favorite against a ranked opponent. An unranked team was a 2.5-point favorite against a ranked opponent. USC won, and it's not out of the ordinary for people that aren't degenerate sports gamblers like myself, but Duke being a 3-point favorite as a Duke fan to see the number 12 team come to town, the times are changing.
It's also a Georgia Tech team that didn't look all that sharp against a Virginia Tech team that is, I don't know, they're not spiraling. Like they had a good win at NC State. But, Georgia Tech is a missed offside call away from already having a loss at Wake Forest. They didn't put away Virginia Tech. I'm trying to say here, Georgia Tech has not been as impressive as you would want the number 12 team in the country to be in certain games. I mean, even if you say their biggest win of the year was Clemson, which I'm pretty sure it would be, winning at Colorado in the season opener was impressive, but Colorado without Shedeur and without Travis Hunter is not the same program they've been 2 years ago. Georgia Tech came out on fire against Clemson, just hit a lull in the second half, and then had to have a couple good drives to win that game and had to get the fire drill 54-yard field goal to win it. It's not like they won it in dominant fashion against Clemson in the way Syracuse did in Clemson. Like there's an argument to be made that Syracuse's win over Clemson is a lot more impressive than Georgia Tech's was.
Yeah, I mean, I have. It's funny you were talking about those because I have it down here. They are 6-0. Game one, Hayden's King 45-yard TD at Colorado with like a minute left to win by a touchdown. Game two is Gardner Webb. Game three, 55-yard field goal at Clemson, and we know how Clemson is now. But still went on the road to beat Clemson. Then they beat Temple. Manny Diaz.
That was at home. It was at home against Clemson.
Sorry, you're right. It was at home against Clemson. Then they beat Manny Diaz's Temple Owls 45-24. And then the Wake game, obviously jumped off sides. They called it. Wake wins because they just take a knee and run out the clock. And then their last game, though, I'll give them credit. That was the most complete game that I've seen Georgia Tech have all year, the 35-20 win against Virginia Tech. Shout out to Brent Key going for two when they scored the opening play or opening drive, and they won by 15 at somebody that had Virginia Tech plus 14.5. So that sucked. But they played really good from the start of that game to the end. I want to go back into my notes here to give everybody. I gave it last week about the three opponents Duke has beaten. They have a winning record against in the conference in the ACC, and so I talked about. And so Duke is 35-55-1 all time against Georgia Tech, but Duke is only 21-23 at home against Georgia Tech. So that's a good nugget that. You go to Georgia Tech, bad things happen, but 21-23 all time at home. Georgia Tech's won 4 straight in the series. Here's the last 3 games. Last year, 24-14. Duke was up 14-10 going in the fourth quarter. They're outscored 14-0. Then it was 2022. Yes, 2022, 23-20 in overtime. Duke got called for the bullshit OPI where Duke would have won the game because they had it first to go at the 5. Instead, it backed them all the way up, and then Todd Polino missed a game-tying 53-yard field goal.
Shaka Hayward got ejected for targeting early in that game.
Samir Hagens had 3 punt returns for 139 yards, one for a touchdown, almost a second one. And then Riley Leonard had probably his worst passing game in a Duke uniform that game. I'm going to get into that with more of the preview. And then 2021 – Duke lost 31-27 at home. Duke gave up a 36-yard touchdown to Jeff Sims, who started last week for Arizona State, by the way, with 51 seconds left to lose. And I literally turned off the TV and laid in my driveway for probably 45 minutes when that game happened.
That was that team's what turned out to be their best shot at an ACC win in Cutcliffe's last season. And all I remember is Mateo Durant might have carried the ball 45 times. Like, Duke clearly said, we are winning or losing this game riding Mateo Durant into the ground. And they rode him, and he had something like 45 yards. He might not have averaged more than 3 yards a carry. It was very much a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense that day. They just did not trust anything about their passing game, and they still could not win because they gave up a late touchdown to Jeff Sims.
Yeah, that was brutal. Duke was addicted to running like a cover 0 blitz to end games and the end of Cutcliffe's era, and it always never worked. It was just insane. We're going to send everybody, and we can't defend one-on-one because I don't think Derek Jones was DB coach then, but Derek Jones's technique was we're cheetahs, so we're just going to chase their open receiver from behind, and that's what happened. But Duke's QBs versus Brent Key, they're 38 completions, or 38 for 73, 52% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions with an average of 170 yards per game. Last year, Malik Murphy, God, where is it in my notes? I don't even have it. I had it, but I don't now. Leonard was 20 of 42 for 136 yards. And then I have in my notes that Duke's 2 TDs were broken coverages last year, 65-yard touchdown, Samir Hagens, and a 26-yarder by Eli Pankel, because it was just broken coverage by Georgia Tech. And I said, take away those 2 plays, there are 91 yards. Duke had 188 yards on 49 plays, 3.8 yards per play. And Georgia Tech doubled up Duke last year in time of possession, 39 minutes and 27 seconds to 20-33. Georgia Tech was 7 of 16 on third down and 3 of 3 on fourth down. Duke was 3 of 11 on third down, 1 of 2 on fourth down, and then also Duke forced 0 turnovers because, Haynes King he's really good what he does. And that was the stat I wanted to give was Duke's had 2 QBs play against Georgia Tech, and both QBs have had abysmal performances for the most part. I know Lee Murphy had those 2 passing touchdowns, but like I said, they were really dump offs on broken coverage, and Duke just turned and ran. And then Riley Leonard was 20-42, and that game was just – it was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, it was the team's first loss. So it was Elko's first loss.
Mm-hmm.
That was their first game with Key as interim coach.
Yep, and you mocked me when I said that Duke was going to lose Georgia Tech because of interim head coach, and they did. And I hate that turf at Georgia Tech too. I hate that turf. It just seems like Duke never gets good grip there. They kept slipping and falling last year, and when Elko was there, I don't understand. I hate turf in general.
Is it grass or turf?
Pretty sure it's turf. It's definitely turf. Definitely when Elko and them played. I very vividly remember that. I want to talk about Haynes King, obviously. He's done a fantastic job of what he does. He has 9 rushing touchdowns this season. He had 11 last year, the 10 year before. But I swear to God, after every game, Connor, I'm convinced his ride of transportation is in an ambulance to go back to his apartment, because there's no team bus or his own vehicle that's going to take him back to his apartment. It has to be an ambulance. That guy is going to just be picked up on a football field and just like not even carted off. He's just going to be smothered. Like he is just going to be flat. I mean, he has 120 carries, 125 carries the last 2 years. He's at 87 carries this year. They're just like this Cam Scatterbo against a brick wall with him going to the line of scrimmage. Just head down, get me 3 or 4 yards. We're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again.
I'm learning all about Georgia Tech's playing surface. So I hear you talking about Haynes King, but I'm not paying attention.
That's fine. But Haynes King, Brinke's done a great job with him because, a couple of years ago, he had 2,800 passing yards, which was, really, that's good. Had a 61% completion percentage, though, and 16 interceptions. I know he had 28 touchdown passes, but he had 16 picks. He's not a great deep ball passer. He's very good at short to intermediate, and you saw that last year where he had 14 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions with a 73% completion percentage, because it's like, hey, we're going to call quick pass Eric Singleton Jr. or Malik Rutherford, and they just went and they had yards after catch. Technically, last year there was more yards per completion than the year before. They threw for 2,800 yards, but you had explosive, twitchy guys. You just got the ball out to them, and they just did it themselves.
So they have some explosive, twitchy guys still, even though Singleton is at Auburn, I think.
Yeah, he's at Auburn.
By the way, synthetic turf. So I don't know if that's actually turf or if it's grass masquerading as turf, but it's synthetic turf. Apparently, they put it in recently in the last 5 years. Having watched kind of the formula to beat this team, or at least the formula to get up 17 points in the second half, Wake Forest pretty simply manned up Georgia Tech's receivers and stopped the run. And that was kind of the theme when Manny wasn't talking about Penn State today. It's not like he talked about it the whole press conference. It was 3.5 out of 16 minutes. But you have to stop the run against this team, or they're just going to dictate everything about the game. And that's more or less what they've done against Duke. Even though Duke took a 14-10 lead to the fourth quarter last year against this team, it felt like Georgia Tech controlled the game with its running game in that one. I mean, and they can do that because they have 2 dynamic running backs with Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley, I think is how you say it. I don't want to get in pronunciation trouble again, or get a Duke podcast in pronunciation trouble again. I think it's Hosley. And they have 3 dynamic runners because Haynes King is a runner. He's a running player playing quarterback. I don't think it's disrespectful to say that. They stopped trying to throw the ball down the field on Wake. So it's going to be priorities 1, 2, and 3 for Duke's defense, or stop the run. That's kind of why you have to have Trey Freeman and Kendall Johnson back for this one. as well as it worked with Luke Mergott and Elliott Shopper playing linebacker and playing a nickel package that they drew up on the sideline and played for the last 2/3 of the game at Cal. I don't think that works for a full game against this team that is going to put a bunch of beef on the field and try to run you over. So you have to stop the run. The other thing I'll say that I kind of it dawned on me, I didn't go back and check this with the PFF numbers. Haynes King throws right. Like, he's a right-handed quarterback. He throws to the right side of the field. I don't know if I saw him attempt a pass to the left that wasn't a quick screen or something quick going toward the middle. Like, he is not throwing back shoulder fades to the left side of the field. And maybe he comes out and throws 4 of them in the first half against Duke and makes me look like an idiot. But, like, he is – if you stop the run, I think this team becomes a little more beatable. And that might be true of every team in college football, but it just – that's kind of the secret sauce to them. And that's what I saw for 2.5 quarters when they were in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, I mean, he has been a gladiator for them. He's been a warrior, and he is the reason they won at Colorado, because he had that 45-yard touchdown run with a minute to go. Like, he makes those plays. I mean, he at UGA last year in the 6 overtimes, like, the guy was just resilient and relentless, and they should have won that game, and that was bullshit. But, like, I love watching him play because he's just so tough. But last year when Duke lost by 10, they still were in it in the fourth quarter. Todd Polino missed like a 35-yard field goal with 5 minutes to go to really seal the deal, because that would have made a one-score game, but he missed, and so Duke lost by 10. But last year, Duke did keep Haynes King in check, relatively speaking. Like, he threw 2 touchdown passes, but he was 23 of 31 for 167 yards. So everything was short and quick. And early in the game, it was working. But he had 12 carries for 32 yards, and that is his bread and butter. And Duke did a really good job of not allowing him to beat them on the ground. But Jamal Haynes got loose. He had 19 carries for 128 yards, and he's coming back. So Duke's going to have to – I'm saving it for my key of the game. But Malik Rutherford, who is back, 8 catches for 76 yards last season against Duke. But, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to talk about before the keys of the game. Key point also, Manny Diaz presser today. Anna Snyder, the Fayetteville Observer, asked Manny about the health of Trey Freeman, and Manny said that both Trey Freeman and Kendall Johnson have a chance to be featured this weekend. So Duke will have linebacker depth potentially for this game against Georgia Tech. And I just hope it doesn't get in the way of Elliott Shopper just getting ACC Player of the Week.
It's always funny to see the way PFF grades things compared to the way we watched it play out, because he did not have a good grade against Cal. And I think there were some misfit runs, and Cal broke 1 or 2. And that's one of those things where you love and you hate PFF for this. They don't take circumstance, and PFF graders are not looking at it thinking this guy's a freshman playing for the first time, significant snaps. And there's literally not a linebacker behind him. Like, if he or Luke Mergott go out of the game, Duke is, like I said on last week's show, they might literally be putting a tight end in there to play linebacker. But it's always funny to see the PFF grades of a guy that has 12 tackles and 2 sacks and an interception. And it's like, yeah, he was slightly below average. Well, shit. If he has a good game, then what are his stats going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, the one play I can think of that like gave him knocked his grade was before he just locked in, and that was when Kendrick Raphael scored a rushing touchdown, and Shopper's literally holding his foot as he's getting dragged, and Raphael reaches for the goal line and gets in, and then Shopper was frustrated with himself. They didn't tackle him, and then after that, he just locked in. Like, it was like LeBron James Game 6 in Boston when he was with the Heat, just locked in.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that game anymore.
But yeah, so Duke's getting healthier. Speaking of, we talked about it last week. Terry Moore, Connor, did Coach Diaz say anything about Terry Moore's status?
Yeah, it's still the same thing. So I think literally Manny's words today were same deal, which means he's working on the side. I take that to mean he is not close to being able to play this week. So we're slowly getting closer to he might not play until the last 4 games of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if we see him at Clemson, but
you can rest him. You can rest him for either UConn or UNC. You can rest him on one of those 2 games.
Yeah. Everybody, it's funny. All 3 Tobacco Road teams have Carolina in the last 3 weeks of the season, and all 3 of them are very much excited to still have that coaching staff intact.
I don't want that staff to leave. I'm tired of people. I've been hush hush about like what's happening in UNC because I don't want it to be more attention. I want it to get through the year. I want Bill Belichick on the sideline for when Duke plays them. I'm tired of seeing like there's NC State fans, like UNC fans. You think this is acceptable? I'm like, shut the hell up. I want this to keep happening. This is exactly what we want to happen. Why are you talking? Why are you snitching on the bullshit that's happening in Chapel Hill? Shut the hell up and let it happen.
This is the new stop snitching messaging.
Yeah, it's like telling the teacher, hey, you forgot to check our homework. Like, go F yourself. I didn't do it. Don't bring it up to the teacher. So let's go into the keys of the game for this, Connor, as we wrap up. This is obviously going to be shorter than our normal ones because there's no recap into this preview. But what are your keys to the game for Duke to beat? I was going to say upset, but they're the favorite for Duke to beat Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I'm sticking with what I said. It's you beat Georgia Tech by stopping the run. Now, granted, priority number 2 or priority 1B, whatever you want to call it, is Duke's offense staying in a rhythm. That was one of the main things I was asking today about in the press conference was Duke's offense was so good in the last 3 games that we saw them. Not complete games. They didn't score every single time they had the ball at Syracuse and Cal, but put up 38 and 45.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And put up 45 against NC State. I mean, everything about what Duke is doing offensively right now is the way they want to play football. So, I always say coming out of an off week, you're either rested or you're rusty. So if they're rusty offensively, that's going to hurt. But no, I think number 1 is you've got to stop Georgia Tech from running the football, or they're just going to bleed the clock down. They're gonna wear on you a little bit, or they're going to hit some explosive 40-yard runs on you. Like Jamal Haynes, once he gets to the second level, is gone, and Haynes King can plow through some DBs and it is gone. Like you've got to get them on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, my keys to the game is stop the run, specifically running quarterback. That terrifies me. I know Duke did a good job of keeping him in check last year, as I talked about, but I mean, ask Jake Ratzlaff about playing Duke. He probably had the best game by a Tulane quarterback of all time, and plus on the stage of Mensa coming back to Tulane, he had over 100 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, and then every slant that he threw went for 20-plus yards. Threw for like 250 yards, and he wasn't even killing Duke throwing deep. But him running the ball set the tone for them to where over 100 yards for a quarterback and 4 touchdowns, and then you stop Haynes King. Well, Jamal Haynes, like I touched on, went off last year, 19 carries for 128 yards against Duke. You just got to stop the run and make those third downs, third and longs. You got to make it 2nd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, and then you got to get off the field on third downs. You have to make them pass on third downs because if it's it's almost like when Duke used to play Army and Navy all the time. You play a triple option team. When it's 3rd and 3, that's exactly the wheelhouse for an option team. That's in the wheelhouse for a Georgia Tech team. You give us 3rd and 3, okay. If we get 2 yards, we're going for it on 4th and 1 because we know we're going to get it. And so you got to keep them on third and 6 and longer. And then you have a 3D coming in off the bench with stopping a tight end and getting a pass break up and Musa Kane. And so you got to keep them third downs, 3rd and longs, And then offensively, you touched on it. I've already touched on it. Duke's explosive plays, they're awesome. Their quick scores are fun. But if Duke can establish a couple long scoring drives to keep Haynes King on the sideline for as long as possible and keep that time of possession closer to 50-50 rather than being down 2-1 in time of possession, it's crucial. So, yeah, those are my keys to the game. Special teams, Todd Polino, just make a field goal. Because it's going to come down to him kicking a field goal. He's kicked a field goal in almost every game, I think, and just got to make it. This is slated as a one-score game by Vegas, a 3-point favorite. You are in charge of the 3 points. You got to make a kick.
Duke was a 3-point favorite at Cal too.
Yeah, that's good to know. And you know what? They ran the table, and he kicked a field goal in that game and made it. Him kicking and making that field goal before halftime is why Duke ran away with it in the second half.
There you go. That's one way to look at it.
And lastly, Connor, before we get out of here, fun fact, I did see this on Twitter. Sorry, I do not have the username with me when I put it in my notes. But in 2014, Georgia Tech was 5-0 and faced a Duke team that was fresh off a bye. Duke won that game 31-25. Georgia Tech is 6-0 this year, and Duke is coming off a bye. So can history repeat itself? I'm coming in with nuggets these last 2 episodes. I'm letting you know. I am in.
You can't take full credit if somebody told you that on Twitter, though.
They didn't tell me. I saw it on Twitter. I stole it on Twitter.
Oh, you're stealing it.
I'm taking it, and it's mine for this show. But no, seriously, that was a great tweet. I'm just saying I'm keeping you on your toes with giving you nuggets. I know I didn't come up with that nugget, but it's a great nugget.
It's a good nugget. I wish you knew who it was so that I could.
Jared Hallis. If I mispronounced your last name, I'm sorry. But Jared Hallis, at Jared Hallis GT, he's the one that tweeted it. Good stat, and he gets credit. So look, I am being nice. This is the difference between the Big J and Little J right here. The Big J is holding the Little J accountable for just making, just an observation on his timeline. And I had to go back and cite my source. My professor Roper would be so excited to hear that J-Man finally cited a source and did it correctly. But Connor, I appreciate you as always, brother. Duke, Georgia Tech, noon kickoff on ESPN, and then Duke goes right into a bye week again. So next week's episode will just obviously be Duke and Georgia Tech recap. And hopefully, for my sake, Duke wins. I don't have a bet in this game yet. If I had a bet, I honestly would lean the under 60.5. I feel like it's a lot of points. So I would lean the under because I think time possession, both teams will try to establish longer possessions. So I'm going to go with the under. So bet the over.